Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the Jonsbo Pisa A5, a 5 heat pipe CPU cooler, which is relatively inexpensive and potentially can do a very good job on modern chipsets. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Jonsbo A5. This is a relatively inexpensive cooler, kindly sent over to us for review by uglybob. Thank you very much, uglybob. And this is something I've not seen before, although slightly unusual name. For those of you that obviously know things about the world, in Italy there is a tower named Pisa, and is historically famous for being basically built on a slant. So let's hope this one isn't. Appears to be pretty straight at the moment, so I think that's absolutely fine. Yeah, slightly unusual choice for a name. There's many other towers in the world which could have been named after, but anyway, I digress. So there's actually a very confusing product stack for this actually, because this is the Pisa A5, there's also a Pisa A4 and a Pisa A4L and A5L, and of which all of them come in either white, such as this, or black, and actually come in varieties of having addressable RGB fans or not having addressable RGB fans. So there's pretty much something for everybody. Starting price on this on AliExpress, somewhere in the region of about £15 for the plain white version with non-RGB, and ranging up to somewhere in the region of about $25 or £25, depending on which one you want to go for. So effectively, it's going to be pretty inexpensive in terms of CPU coolers, although it's going to have some stiff competition from the likes of the SE214XT and other options from Thermalright. So we're going to go through today, do some testing. I'm actually going to test this bizarrely against a 360mm AIO, which is currently running in the PC behind me. Normally on these kind of reviews, I generally tend to test slightly older CPUs from the AM4 platform, but I'm actually going to try this on AM5, being that that is going to be the kind of successor and will be pretty much mainstream. And depending when you're watching this video, you may see this cooler somewhere and think, will it work with my AM5 platform and how does it perform? So that's what we're going to try and get done in today's video. So let's go through the unboxing process and take a look at the specifications. Now the box itself comes with both the A4 series and also the A5 series information on there. So yeah, make sure you look at the right one on here. So on this one, this is the A5, so on this side. So we're looking fan speed up to around about 1800 RPM, give or take, and lows of 800. I'm hoping it goes lower than that because 800 RPM could be potentially quite noisy. We do have a CFM of around about 82, so that's pretty decent, and relatively decent static pressure at 2.23 H2O. Hopefully it's not going to be too noisy. It does support the very latest chipsets, so Intel's LGA 1700 and also the older ones such as the 115X, 1200, etc. And for AMD users, both AM4 and AM5. Sadly not AM3, although that is pretty much dead in the water by the time of recording this video. So let's start off with what we actually get in the box. So clearly we get the CPU cooler itself, the actual tower. I've actually attached the fan. It doesn't come attached, you have to do all that yourself. The fan itself, actually some nice elements there design-wise, very reminiscent of the deep cool models with that kind of section on there. And it's nice to see that the top, actually the top plate has been covered with this nice white plastic. And I think in our build it's actually going to look very nice. We'll try and get you some B-roll shots of that. The fan itself, 9 blades, really nice deep rubber cups as well to keep the vibrations down to a minimum. The actual heatsink tower itself seems to be very well made. Decently constructed, no bent fins or anything, which is something which we quite often see. The difference between this, the A4 and the A5, is down to the heat pipes. So the A5 has got 5 6mm heat pipes, whereas the A4 has only got 4 of them, and the TDPs are slightly different. So the A4 does up to about 250 watts TDP, whereas the A5 does, I think it's 255 or 260. So I'll put the right information on the screen for you right now. It's on the box, but essentially there's very little between them. But if the prices are very similar, probably worth going for the 5 heat pipes just to give you that little bit of extra thermal capacity. And talking of thermal capacity, something which is actually a nice addition on the cold plate here, which attaches to the CPU, you've actually got these raised fins as well. That's always going to help as well, especially things like your idle temperatures, where the CPU is just trying to soak some of that heat away into the heat stack. So having that extra amount of metal on there with the fins on there should make for some pretty decent idle temperatures, I would hope. Connectivity, very simple. You've got a single 4-pin PWM, and for the addressable RGB versions, you've got addressable RGB, so that's the 3-pin 5V, and also there is a pass-through with a cap on it as well, so if you want to connect up other things in a daisy chain format, you certainly can do that. So yeah, looks pretty good so far. When it comes to the actual packaging, what you get in terms of mounting equipment, very minimal. I like this a lot. Very nice to see. So you've got your user guide, which kind of really you don't need because it's very, very simplistic, very straightforward. So if you're going down the Intel route, you will need to use the Intel backplate. This is plastic, is adjustable. So you just pop those out. 2 positions only on this one, so no real complexity here. If you're on LGA 115X or 1200, then it's on the inner side one. If you pull it outward to the very end of the extent, then that is LGA 1700. So yeah, pretty straightforward, very easy to do. So that is it, ready for 1700 straight out the gate. When it comes to the actual mounting hardware for the motherboard itself, then you are going to be using these little plastic standoffs. Nice to see that they've made these universal, so for all of the Intel and all of the AMD platform, you just use those ones, no complexity there, no working out which ones they are. It's all in one bag. You've also got the actual screws for mounting them, very nicely done. So again, AM4, AM5, just a simple section there. The differential between them is the screws are a little bit thinner for the Intel, and also the AMD ones, they actually machine them, so there is actually a gap at the top. So you can see there's an unthreaded section. So if you've got them all on a desk and you've opened them all up and you're not sure which is which, the Intel ones, the thread goes right to the end of the screw, whereas the AMD for AM4, AM5, they're only threaded part of the way up, and it's a coarser thread. Also included is a small thing of thermal compound. Not entirely sure how good that is going to be. I'm going to be using an MX4 because that's what I've used previously on there. So like for like, trying to get all that done. But essentially, if you do need to remount it or you have no thermal paste, it's nice that they've included some. And when it comes to the bracketry, again, very simple, very straightforward. Both sockets, or all sockets in fact, use the same brackets. So AM4, AM5, Intel LGA 5X, all the way through to LGA 1700. Just those plain simple brackets. Very nice. So that's pretty much it for the unboxing and a quick look through. Let's go straight into the benchmarks and see how well it actually does. Okay, so the testing has been done and the results are in, and actually pleasantly surprised, this thing does actually perform very well. Although there are going to be some caveats, the TDP rating of 265 watts, I would say, is possibly over-egging things somewhat. Although your mileage may vary, we are using the AM5 platform, which is known to just basically run away with temperatures. I have got it pretty much stock, although it is undervolted slightly by a factor of 30. Those of you who've got an AM5 platform will know exactly what that means. It doesn't bring down the temperatures massively, but keeps the performance and normally prevents it going over 100 degrees, which I'm glad to say is the case. So let's take a look at some of the performance results and you can get an idea of how this performs. So again, this is compared with a Thermaltake 360mm AIO cooler, which is considerably more expensive, looking at a factor of 4 times more expensive than this particular cooler, give or take, obviously depending on the region. So yeah, it's done very, very well. So let's look first of all at the idle temperatures. Now I should say as well, the temperatures are all done using our same methodology that we use through all of our testing. So that is with the fan settings at 20 at 20%, 40 degrees at 40%, 60 degrees at 60%, and at 70 degrees we go to 100%, which is what we've used pretty much all the time. So if you're watching the channel and you're looking at other reviews, then you'll know pretty much where it stands. Also, temperatures have been recorded using a delta, so all the temperatures you're going to be getting are over the ambient room temperature, of which at the moment is just slightly under 27 degrees, which is rather warm for the United Kingdom. Anyway, let's get on with the results. So the low idle temperatures with the 360mm AIO, we're looking at 15.3 Celsius, whereas with the Jonsbo A5 Pisa ARGB, we're looking at 14.3 degrees Celsius. So actually a 1 degree difference, actually slightly lower on the air cooler, which generally is the case. A lot of air coolers generally do work very well in those idle circumstances due to the size of the cold plate, etc, etc. Anyway, that is the result, so beat it by 1 degree, so we've got a win so far. When things take a little bit of a dive for the worse is looking at the highest temperatures. So highest recorded temperature on the 360mm AIO, 66.8 degrees Celsius, whereas with the Jonsbo A5 we're looking at highest temperature recorded of 68.5 degrees Celsius. Only just under 2 degrees difference, so fantastic performance really for what it is. Although it did slightly run away and we were getting into the point of where the software was actually recording that it was getting into towards those thermal limitations. When it comes to the Cinebench score, now we did run Cinebench on a 5-minute loop just to saturate the coolers to see how they did. Obviously the air cooler is going to saturate much quicker than the AIO, but actually the difference in score was only about 45 points difference. So we had 19,866 for the AIO and we had 19,821 for the air cooler, which again is kind of within that territory of margin of error and obviously continual loops. You'll probably find that that will change slightly. I tried to keep it as kind of fair playing as possible by having all the usual apps open as I would normally. So in terms of actual raw performance, I think for £25 or thereabouts, this does an absolutely fantastic job. And if you don't want to spend a lot of money on a cooler and you'd rather spend that money elsewhere, such as on your GPU, getting this over a 360mm AIO could potentially save you in the region of about £70 to put towards other components. That could be a 2TB NVMe drive or another 32 gigs of RAM or whatever it might be. So potentially you can save a lot of money. I think it actually looks really nice as well. Looking at some of the footage, you can see the RGB is actually pretty well distributed across the blades there, and fortunately the sticker in the middle is relatively in the right place. No crazy wobbles going on. Also, I'm very happy to report that the Leaning Tower of Pisa is not the case. It does look very straight, and mounting wise, very, very straightforward, very easy to do. You can install it in a matter of about 5 minutes with the right tools available. We will be doing a separate installation video on how to install this on various chipsets, so do look out for that. If you are interested in this cooler and you've liked this review and you want to see how it's installed, then we will do some separate videos for that if that is your thing. When it comes to installation, there are a couple of things which did catch me out. First of all, those little black spacers which go over the holes from the AM4 backplate or AM5 backplate. I found mine to be not quite machined right, so I did actually have to take basically a screwdriver and kind of twist out some of the excess plastic inside, which potentially, again, if you're watching the installation video, that might be why you're watching the installation video, because you can't get the plastic bits over the actual tabs. When it comes to the Intel side of things, it's going to be absolutely fine because the pins come through and they're designed exactly for that, so no problems there. But AM4 and AM5 users may experience some technical difficulties actually getting those plastic lugs over the bracket. We should also discuss noise as well. When it comes to the actual idle noise, in fact, I've left it in there because it is very quiet and actually is quieter than my AIO. AIOs are very good, very silent, you can set them very low, but unfortunately all AIOs to some extent do have that kind of whine of the impeller or the pump, which is pretty much unavoidable due to basically how it works. Without spending a lot of money, you will always hear some kind of pump noise. With this, obviously, because it is just an air cooler, there is none of that to speak of. So in terms of idle, it's absolutely silent, can't fault it at all, and potentially one of the quieter coolers we've used in terms of that idle noise. Where things take a little bit of a turn for the worse is with the actual loudness of the cooler. At full load, which realistically most people probably won't keep it there for very long, but at full load we hit up to 1900 RPM, and here's an example of what the noise was like. This is the fan at 1900 RPM, and I am approximately an arm's length away. So there you can see it's a little bit of a jet engine once it actually gets ramped up, but under normal circumstances for gaming and just normal idling in Windows, you will never notice it. So let's quickly go over the pros and cons of this cooler, if it is going to be something you are potentially going to purchase. Obviously one of the first pros is going to be the price. Very cheap, and if you don't want the addressable RGB version, then potentially you can get this for as low as about £14 to £15, which is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously as well, another pro is the choice. You've got the choice of addressable RGB or not, and a choice of black or white. Other pros are the installation. Very, very simple, very easy to do. Obviously, the caveat being for those little plastic plates, but other than that, very simple, very straightforward, and minimal hardware required. Looking at the cons, again, noise-wise, a little bit noisy at the high end, so if you're going to be using this in some sort of rendering station, it's going to be at full load all the time. Probably not the cooler for you, and also I would suggest the TDP rating is way overestimated, at least it was in our instance. So overall, I think this is a fantastic little cooler, fantastic price, looks very nice, extremely easy to install, and for the majority of processors, I think it's going to work absolutely brilliantly. I would say, do bear in mind what the TDP limit is of your processor. I think for maybe 13th gen and 12th gen Intel processors, especially ones above the mid-range, you might want to look elsewhere if you want it to be a lot quieter. And the same goes for AM4 and AM5, although AM4 does seem to handle temperatures significantly better. So anyway, there you go. There are my thoughts and findings on the Jonsbo A5 Pisa ARGB. If you've liked this video, then don't forget to smash the like button, and if you want to see more content like this on a daily basis, hit subscribe and the chime notification, and if you want future video releases. But for now, thanks to Bob, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.